Hello, everybody. My name is Autodesk, and presenter is David Lau. He's a senior product specialist. In this webinar, we're going to go through understanding Autodesk license file and how it's combined and what's the main things to know about a license file. So in this particular webinar, as I said, it's going to be going through. We're going to be going through the network license file and how to build, how to generate, and how to read the license file ourselves. So the presentation has myself, and David Lau, who is the presenter of this webinar. So we have planned this webinar to have about 30 minutes presentation and give 30 more minutes for Q&A. So you can ask any questions during the webinar as well. You can chat through the questions section of the webinar. In right-hand corner, you should have that option, and we'll try to kind of answer on the fly whenever the question comes in, as well as after the presentation. We're going to go through the questions and we'll make sure that everybody has some answers. If for any reason we are not able to provide you the answer right now during this webinar session, we will have answers provided to Autodesk forums to the webinar's feedback section.
Okay.
Thank you, and Dave, please proceed.
Okay, so the bottom line is we want to try and build some IQ, and ultimately we want to make it over easy. So this is actually a replay. Oh, this is some of the upcoming webinar events. The original first one was Network Licensing IQ. This is the location for the files. Today we're doing the Autodesk License IQ. We actually had to redo it because we had a fatal blue screen error about 2 weeks ago. And so last week we did the Installation IQ, and next week we're going to be doing Power Skills for network deployment. Okay.
Muted. Unmuted.
So one of the things that we built in our process is we actually have a backup plan for epic failures for our presentation. We added some processes to help us get around the blue screen of death. And for me, my computer rebooted, and for the end users, the webinar froze. So you didn't see this screen when it crashed on my end. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with 10 points, kind of like 10 commandments in our presentation. So the first one is, what is the license parser? It is a tool, it's a website owned by Autodesk, and it basically parses your license file into plain English. One of the questions that we had in the very first seminar was, is it a legitimate site? Because it just looks like, license file parser beta. And basically, if you load in that site into a whois search, it actually will say that it's owned by Autodesk. Now, just to give you some history on this, the reason why it's been beta for so long is because it's actually runs on CGI scripting. So what happens is, because it's a CGI script and not a Windows type of script, which is like .asp on a web page, we can't put it on the Autodesk main site. So the the EIS department, they won't support it because they don't support CGI scripting. So there's some history on why the license parser site is a beta. Okay. Over here, I actually have a little icon for a video where if you just look at the presentation itself, you can actually view the video where I kind of show you that workflow. So that's what that little icon for the movie is. The next item, point number 2, is what are the parts of a license file? Typically, when a license is on subscription, you will see that it has a package and increment file in it. So you'll see the server info, a package, and increment. That is correct. If the license is not on subscription, you only will see the word increment in it. And there's only one license that I've seen so far that only has an increment, which is on subscription. It's a MoleFlow type of license, but usually, we do that, one-off for that user. They might have to generate some additional older version licenses, basically. And finally, if you only use an increment license like let's say if you have a subscription license that has package and increment in it, and you take out the word package, right? It actually will cause the license file to fail. And a good thing to do is you can actually use the license parser to input the file to see if it actually works. And I'll give you a quick demo of that later on. Another tip, which is that little money icon, it's a tip, is that there's a number sign. You can actually put number signs in a text file, in licensing, and basically it just adds notes to it so you know what the part of the license file is. So if you had like AutoCAD, you would put pound AutoCAD, and then if you had Building Design Suite, you can do pound Building Design Suite, so you know which each section is basically. Again, I have a video demo of that as well, which will show up at the very end. The next item is number 3, ordering your license file. Now, you can put an increment license, which is not on subscription, and a subscription license together. You can put it anywhere. There's no rhyme or reason. You can, but I prefer, because the license parser does it in a particular way, I usually put the increment licenses at the very top, and then I do package increment below. And I try to put like the cheapest license at the top, and then the cheaper, more expensive ones on the bottom. So, for example, if you had like an AutoCAD 2010 that wasn't on subscription because you need it, I would put that at the very top. And then if you have AutoCAD on subscription, a 2015 license, you'd put that at the below it. And then I would put a Building Design Suite Standard, and then Building Design Suite Premium, and then Building Design Suite Ultimate. Okay. Again, I always use the license parser to help you order that file. And again, you can put some pound signs to help you, know what you've put in the file basically. Okay. Step or point number 4. If you have, for example, if you have 5 AutoCAD licenses and 1 AutoCAD license on the same, like at your site. So the scenario is for example, let's say you bought your AutoCAD. You bought 5 AutoCADs at the start of January, and your company then is growing and you need an additional license. You buy that additional license today. What happens is if you generate that 1 license and combine it with the one that you generate in January, you'll only get 1 license. So you actually have to generate them both at the same time. Now, the next question would be something like, why would this happen? It's usually, for example, if you bought your license on subscription in January, and you buy this new license today with subscription, there's like a bit of, it has to be prorated. So, you'd have to, if you wanted all as 6 licenses, you'd have to kind of sync up your subscription so that it starts today basically for all 6 licenses. But ultimately, you don't really need to do that. You can actually just, as long as you combine them together and make sure that they're generated on the same date, you'll have no issue. Another note is that on the license file, in the entire license file, the only thing that you can change is the host name. You can change it to anything. You can change it to an IP address. You can change it to localhost, which is kind of like a loopback name. And another thing, too, to watch out for is case sensitivity with the server name as well. So I've had an issue where if the user had an uppercase server name and lowercase mixed in, and it didn't work properly. In fact, I can give you a quick demo of it not working. So kind of like a best practice is to actually remove the server, use server and vendor line, so that way you'll never have that problem again. So I have like a link and a quick movie demo of that as well. Okay. Number 5, if I have a license that is on subscription, if with 2015, do I need to combine it with the 2014? And the question is, you don't really need to. You only need your 2015 license because that actually gives you 3 versions back. So you should actually just back up your 2014 license file. Another thing, too, is when you actually combine these 2 licenses together and you parse it in the license parser, it actually will look a little funny. And again, we can give you a quick demo of that. I've been talking about the license parser a lot. So Avto, can you maybe do the poll question? I just want to know, Avto, do you want to talk about the question? Avto?
Hello everybody, here is the poll question. If you have heard about the license parser website, please let us know. Just answer yes or no, and I will close the poll in about a minute. Okay, great. Thanks. Poll is closed, and let me kind of share the answers. So 42% of the attendees said they haven't heard about this website, Dave, and only 58 says no.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, we use the site every day. We've been using it since like 2011. And what's really deceptive is that it actually says beta on it, and it's not actually a beta as far as we're concerned. Okay, so that's step number 5. We're going to go to number 6. I'm just going to start it back up here. Another thing too about licensing is when you launch your AutoCAD, it actually looks, what is cascading? And so when you launch your AutoCAD, it actually will look and use the least expensive license before using the most expensive one. And so this is really important, that's the reason why I like to put AutoCAD at the top and let's say Building Design Suite at the bottom, because no matter how you install the software, let's say if your company has AutoCAD and Building Design Suite, if you launch your AutoCAD from the person that installed the Building Design Suite, it actually will use an AutoCAD license, the cheapest one. And then when they launch, let's say, Revit, it will then move up to the higher version, basically. Another thing that we get into product support is that if you have a distributed server setup, it actually will search the network for the cheapest license. So you may notice one of the side effects is that it takes a long time to launch. So when you launch your AutoCAD, it's actually looking on your servers and trying to find the cheapest license. And then on top of that, it's trying to cascade everything and check the list. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a quick demo on this, but there's another way. If you set up your FlexLM diagnostics to 3, you can actually see the codes that are generated as it's looking through the file, or when you launch the product. And I've listed the two, the cascading order in English as well as the FlexNet code, so you can kind of see that. But I'll be giving you a quick demo of that as well. And so in this example on the side here, when I launch AutoCAD, it will look on the network, and basically it looks for AutoCAD first, and then the next license is going to look for is AutoCAD on the Mac, and then mechanical, PNID. So this is kind of like the price. Like, AutoCAD is the least expensive, but obviously maybe Plant Design Suite Ultimate is the most expensive product that we have. They could be the same price, and usually the Education Master Suite, because it's an education facility, we don't really they don't care about how fast it loads. Basically, it's usually at the very end. You'll notice like anything with education, it's always like near the bottom of the list because it's not as critical for launch times for them. Number 7, we have port numbers. So on the license file, you can edit your port numbers. 2080 is the one that's been around since the dawn of time. Okay, that's owned by, it's been reserved by Autodesk. So there's a link that shows you how to get to there, and you can see that that has been owned by Autodesk for quite some time. There are some instances where that port number is being used by another product, which they shouldn't use. And for example, in one of our blog posts, you actually have to edit that and change it to like 2081, for example. Another thing too is the LMGRD port uses 27,000 to 27,009. It ranges basically. And one of the things that we've also noticed is that if you're license serving more than one product, let's say AutoCAD or Autodesk with ArcGIS, ProEngineer, CATIA, Avaya, any third-party product, 9 times out of 10, actually 10 times out of 10, you will need to change the port number from 27,000 to a different number basically. On the client machines, you don't have to change anything because when the product is launching, it's actually checking for those port numbers basically. So you only need to change it on the server end, and that's it. And then you save the file. I'll give you a quick demo of that as well. All right. Number 8, options file. Now, a good example is that if you have like AutoCAD and Building Design Suite, you definitely want to control who is going to be using like the Building Design Suite because it's a very expensive product. And so, the thing is, we normally would, in summary, you normally have to get the code that you want to enter into the license parser, or you get the code that you want to use from the license parser. You create an ADSK flex.opt file. You put in some basic flags, and then you do a stop-start the license server. And again, there's a little video of that demo. Apto, I have a poll question here.
Absolutely. So here comes the second poll question. Please answer the question like, have you ever created an options file? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to close on the poll questions right now, and I will share the results. So results are as following. So 30% of the people attendees have created the options file, while 70% have never used it. Hiding the poll question, and Dave, you're ready to continue. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you the people who have never created an options file, it is so easy. So I'll give you that demo at the end of the session. So it's pretty easy to do. Okay, so let's start up again. Number 9, We get this question a lot in the 2014 versions, but in the 2015 version, the LM Tools 11.12 is actually running in dual IPv4 IPv6 mode. So I've rarely had to download and install the IPv6 version, and it's noted actually in the log file, and I'll give you a demo of that at the end as well. If you had an older product, like if you're using 2014, you'll definitely may need to swap it out. And as a tip, I always install the IPv4 version, because the IPv4 version, which is basically running in dual mode, actually installs it in the default location. If you just go right into IPv6, right, it just extracts it into C Autodesk basically. So it doesn't install it, so it's a little more confusing, and it won't show up in the control panel. So that's the reason why I always choose to use the IPv4 version. Okay. And last but not least, troubleshooting. So a lot of times if we get a case into product support saying the server is not working or something like that, this is definitely going to make our job a lot easier. And basically, we need to get your license file. We need to get the updated license file that you're having a problem with. We're going to need the debug log file, an options file if you have it, and then basically a perform status inquiry in LM Tools. Another tip is that we actually use screencasts to record the videos, and that usually helps us out a lot. I've been using that a lot for creating cases for other customers as well that have to go to front desk. So that's a really, really good tool. All right. Last but not least, I'm a blogger on the Up and Ready site, and the Up and Ready site is kind of like my cheat sheet or bookmark link for everything dealing with install and licensing software. The most important thing is the nav bar. I have like the knowledge network, installation help docs, install forms, certified hardware, system requirements, and screencasts. I love screencasts. It's just used to record videos, and it's completely free. If you have an Autodesk login, you can start using it right now actually, which is kind of cool. Another thing too that I use a lot on is Pixlr, which is like a free like Photoshop Lite basically, which is a pretty good tool. And without further ado, I'm going to go into the live demo. All right. So I'm just going to minimize this over here to the side. And the first thing, number one, I've kind of created these little folders to help me kind of remind me what I want to do. So over here, I'm going to bring up Firefox. And this is the demo where I show who is, and then I just type in licenseparser.com. And you're going to notice here it's already registered, and you can see that it's owned by Autodesk. All right, so that's the easy one. All right, number two, we got license files. So right over here, I'm actually going to create a test file over here. I'm just going to call it test, and I can leave it as TXT extension. And if I put in, let's say, if I put in this is like the package file, paste that in there. And then I basically paste in the increment file. I created a special increment file. I'll paste it over here and put it in test. I'm going to open up the license parser. I'm going to create two tabs. I always like creating two tabs because in license parser, so you can see the comparison basically. So if I go www.licenseparser, and then I go into here www.licenseparser, I can actually go in here and I'm going to browse to number 1 or number 2. And look at increment and hit open, and you'll notice that the file looks perfect, right? There's no error. And then if I hit browse number 2 and hit package, submit it, that looks okay as well. You can see there's 3 versions back. If I go back and I'm going to just kind of duplicate this package file, and I'm going to actually go in here and I'm going to delete this package code here. And so this looks okay, right? But the parser will actually give you an error, which if I go back in here and I'm going to rebrowse, this is the copy file. Make it a little bigger, the copy file, and hit submit. The parser is pretty good because it'll tell you, did I do the right? Did I save the file? Let me make sure. Oh, it's the original file, so I actually have to choose the other one. Home, browse, choose this file, submit. And you're going to notice, see this? There is an error locating the package definition file. So using just the parser is a good test. So even though this file here kind of looks okay, it's actually not okay. So that's an easy check here. Another thing too is now I have this combined license file, and you'll notice I put the increment up here. So now if I go back into the license parser, and again, because it's a beta, this home button is how you get back to the start. I hit browse and go to my desktop, and I'm going to choose my test.txt file. And you're going to notice that you see here, it puts the increment at the very top. That's my test serial number. So even though the order is down here, I prefer to again put the increment files on the top, so it looks okay. It looks a little bit better. So again, I usually just kind of go like this and put a pound sign, and then like maybe 222. That's my test serial number, and then that's like AutoCAD over here. Pound 222, or that's 111. You can actually see the serial number located in here. If I do a Control F S, or Control F for find SN equals. Let me go back, equals. There's the 111. You'll see it's all in there, but it's just hidden away in the file. So the parser's good at finding all that data. Okay, I'm going to close out of that, save it, and save that. All right, so that was number 2. Now we're going to go to number 3. Let's see what we have for number 3. So there's like an increment file and a package file, and see what my PowerPoint presentation was talking about. Number 3. Yep, so I kind of combined this as well. Basically, you always want to put the increment file at the very top, and then try to put the cheaper licenses on the bottom. So what I would probably do in this case is I'm going to grab this AutoCAD increment file and select all, and I'm going to put it back into here, and then I would probably put my building design suite. Let's do the building design suite package in here. So I'm just going to put this one in here at the very bottom, something like that. So again, I'm going to use the license parser. So I recreated that test file, and I added the building design suite at the very, very bottom of it. And you'll see like AutoCAD increment, the 5 AutoCADs in the building design suite. Okay. Now, I already know that if I try to get a licensing to work, because of the issue date, this is really important, and I think I might discuss it in the 4th scenario about combining licenses, right? The issue date has to be basically the same. So I already know that if I use this file, it will probably cancel out the AutoCAD file, so it's better not to use this one because they're not issued on the same date. These ones will work perfectly, this 5 and 1 basically. So you'll get basically 6 AutoCADs, and then if someone launches a Revit, they'll be able to upgrade up to the building design suite license. Okay. All right, so that's number 4. We can now go to number 5. Let's see what number 5. Point number 5. Okay, so here's an example. I'm going to go back into my test file again on my desktop. I'm going to delete everything out of it. I'm going to put in my 2014 license file on subscription, and then I'm going to then paste in my 2015 license file in there. And I'm going to save it. So now I'm going to open up 3 license parsers. So this is my test file. This is my AutoCAD 2014 file, my 2015 file. Again, I'm going to open up 3 license parsers. Oops. After, how's the refresh rate going?
It's going well, but that does take some time though.
Okay, I'll try to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to open up my, in step number 5, I have my 2014 license file. I'm going to submit the license file. And you will notice this says AutoCAD 2014 3 versions back perfectly. If I go into here and I look at my 2015 file separately, it'll actually say a 2015 license file. And now if I go into the last one where I combined the two files together, and I'm just going to open it up again under Test, you will see that this is like 2014 here and 2015 here. I'm going to close the file. I'm going to go back into License Parser. I'm going to browse to that test file that we generated or combined. And you're going to notice that it says 2014 here, and it also says 2014 here, even though the serial numbers are completely different. So I already know that 444 is 14, and the 111 is 15. So the good thing is you still sometimes have to, the parser is good, but you still sometimes have to visually check it. So over here, this is where you can see that that's a 14 code, and over here there's a 15 code. And the reason why that it doesn't work is because this is the group code, the package code that we're using, 64300, and it's the same value here. And so the parser's not very smart, so that's the reason why it doesn't combine correctly. Again, the parser is always going to be a good check as well. Another thing too is if you're combining these licenses, if you're trying to figure out what is what, you can actually look at the issue date, because you'll notice that if it was a 2015 file, it would have been this year, but if it was a 2014 file, it would have been last year. So you can actually look at the issue date to kind of help you figure out which license file you're actually looking at, whether it's an older version or a newer version. Okay.
And Dave,
let's go to number 6.
Dave, can you please bring back the license file you just showed? Not in parcel, but the license file itself. I just wanted to kind of comment here that, like David said, the package component 64300 is shared between any AutoCAD products, but a component list is different. So because of the component list is different, that makes a problem, and you cannot really combine these two versions, the package files for AutoCAD 2014 with package license files with AutoCAD 2015, because the package component will be messed up. Like you cannot have water and oil in the same jar, and they're going to be separated from each other.
Thank you, Apto.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to quickly jump to step number 6. What happens is I'm going to open up this page here about the cascading sequences. So I'm going to drag this over here, and what I'm going to do, you'll see this is the cascading sequence, and there's also another one I might have to Google it really quickly. Autodesk Flex Code 2015, FlexNet feature codes. And so over here, if I look at AutoCAD, this is like the important one here. If I look at AutoCAD, you'll see these codes in here, and that will be the order basically. And so if I look at AutoCAD, I have to go further down, I'll have to manually do it. AutoCAD right over here, that's like the code for AutoCAD. So right now, I've already set up a license server for AutoCAD right now, and the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a advanced system settings, environment variables. I already have it set up. FlexLM diagnostics equals 3. Let me just double check it. Device manager, environment variables, FlexLM diagnostics equals 3. I'm going to launch my AutoCAD. I'm going to skip this error message. All right, so the product launches. I'm going to close out of this for a second. I'm actually going to stop the license server because I already have, and I'll relaunch my product. And you're going to notice over here I have a diagnostic code here happening, and basically this is your AutoCAD code, the very first one. So based off the cascading sequence, right, it's actually looking at base AutoCAD, and then if I hit OK, it's looking for AutoCAD on the Mac, or actually, let me see, that looks like another AutoCAD probably for the Mac. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to hit cancel out of this. I want to see if other messages come up. So it should cycle through all the options basically, and I get a -15 error. All right. So again, I have a video demo of that just to kind of show you that workflow. The next one, number 7, about editing the license file. So I'm going to start up the license server one more time. Start the server. Right. So I'm going to go to the license manager. So in this license file, this is where the 2080 port is. It's rarely you need to change that one because we kind of own it. Over here is where you would add it for a different event, like our LMGRD basically. So I usually put in 27001, close it, save it, and basically just have to stop and start the license server. And that's all you have to do. Okay. There's an article in here under our Up and Ready site, and it's kind of like extrapolates some of the problems that we've had, and I've kind of posted together. So if you do a search for the word Flexera, Flexera over here, it kind of discusses that if you have multiple users or multiple vendors, you'll have to change the port number, and that's just kind of adding the value there. And depending on the product, sometimes if you want to do 32-bit, ArcGIS has to be 32-bit. That's another story. And here's an example of a vendor that is trying to compete with Autodesk. So they're hijacking the 2080 ports so the licensing wouldn't work, for example. So in this case, it's easier for us just to change it because their program is looking at documentation. So it's easier for us to change that port number. Okay. Another thing too is, I think in this page, this link here, I think if this is the right one, this is like port registry locations, and so if I do a little here for 2080 basically, it actually tells you that it's owned by Autodesk. It's been around since the dawn of time. Okay, close out of that one. Last but not least, there's an options file. Now, I've started up the license server, and right now if I relaunch my AutoCAD, if I go to like license borrowing, so if you have a network license, you can actually borrow a license for a certain amount of time. And I hope you can see this, but see, this is all like white. It means that you can borrow it for almost like 6 months, basically. And then it stops at April 2015. You can see it's gray here. So what I usually do when you're creating an options file, I've already created one, but I usually go to www, again, license parser, browse, and I'm actually going to go to my own license file that I've set up already. This is my license file set up here. And basically, you'll see this code here, and that's the code that I'm going to be using for AutoCAD 2015. And so if this is the options file that I've set up, that's like the code, and usually I just kind of make sure that it matches just to make sure as a good demo. And basically, I already know I'm going to use this flag. If you need to know where the flags are located, they're in the actual FlexLM directory, or in this directory there's like a license administration. So I'm going to actually be using max borrow hours. So in this case, I'm going to be using 144 hours. And 144 hours, I love using Google for this. I just use Google for time conversions now because it's much more accurate. So if I can go days in hours, or let's say hours in days, Google will convert it over, so I can do a change like 144 hours is 6 days. So that's what I want to set it up as. So it takes the mathematics out of the conversion, because sometimes if you make a mistake, it could be 23 hours. It doesn't like that. So I'm going to close and save this file, and I'm actually going to drop this options file that I've created into the folder, And once I do this, I actually have to do stop, start, and we'll do a reread. And once it rereads, if you open up the log file, again, this is where I'm going to try and fast track this a little bit. You'll see IPv6 notation, and a little bit further down, you'll see in here max borrow interval. So that's how you can tell if you've done your options files correctly. There's usually a status in the log file. And so right now, I'll just relaunch my AutoCAD. And if I try to borrow this license, product info, borrow license, you see how it's white here? I can't go past 22. I can choose 21. So this is a really good thing, is if you have a network license, you don't want people to borrow it for like months. You want to let them borrow it over the weekend, basically, so that it will automatically return over the weekend. So usually like 48 hours, maybe like 3 days is the most you'd want to let someone borrow a license. Okay, that was. Oh, yep. So the next item that I wanted to talk about is the options file. I already created that. Number 9, the log file. Again, this is where you can see if you're IPv6. So we covered that point. And then number 10. So usually number 10, it covers everything. So I have in my LM tools here, the license file, the log file, the options file, and in LM tools, I usually do a server status, hit perform status inquiry. And basically, you can copy all that in there as well. Another thing, too, is because I already have Screencast installed, the Screencast recorder is pretty cool. You can just make a recording of it. I have to sign in really quickly, but I just want to kind of give you the workflow. And it's pretty cool for the setup of that. I have to log in. And again, there's notes about how to log in when you're on our blog. It gives you the full workflow. And usually I just kind of go like by region or something and then select it and then record it. All right. And I think that is the end of my presentation. Oh, now I'm going to just go back into my presentation. My apologies. I just go back in here. Let me just go full screen for a moment. So I'm just going to cycle through. Last but not least, if you want, we're going to be posting, one second, live demo, done, questions. Now, right over here is also our Box account where I've uploaded our PowerPoint presentation. Each of the slide demos has a video link of the representation of the workflow. We're going to also be putting questions. I usually put a text file in the Box link to tell you where to go to see the questions that were answered, and we will also have a YouTube recording of this entire session as well. So without further ado, I will let Afto take over, and if there was questions, I'll let him cover them. Afto?
Yes. Hello, everybody. The questions, we don't actually have much questions came during this presentation, but one of the questions is, like, do you still need to have read the license file, after making changes into the options file? It's, and I personally never do the reread, because I find that, doing the read sometimes doesn't really does its own job. My personal workflow is to stop the license server, make a change into the license file or into the options file, and then start the license server. So if you do the stop and start the license server in about like under the minute, like 30 seconds, that's basically what you need. So stoppage of your server will not affect to your client computers. So that's the kind of workflow I personally use, and I believe Jeff is doing the same things too. Dave, can you please kind of let us know, where exactly is the location of these PowerPoint slides so that the attendees can, on their own, grab these PowerPoints?
Can everyone see the end screen there?
And I can see like https://autodesk.box.com/upandreadyiq2. So that's the web URL the guys can go and to find the PowerPoint slides, and you will also find there the recording of this webinar, if in case you would like to kind of listen over and over again.
So yeah, so Jeff, about the reread, I rarely use reread, especially for options file. Like almost you have to stop and start the server. Need to stop.
Okay. Now the question again we have, if it's correct that if a client is using a suite, each application opened will grab a license. That's a yes and no, because that depends on the version of the application. For example, if you have a building design suite Ultimate 2015, right, and if you open up AutoCAD 2015 and Revit 2015, both products are going to take one license, because it's a building design suite 15 license. The package license is going to be taken out. But if a person, end user, opens AutoCAD 2015 and Revit 2014, then it's going to take two licenses, because if each version needs its own license. But suites together, the same versions, do not do that. And also, if in case there is some backward compatibility, let's say 2012, currently, like 2015 license covers licensing of Autodesk products starting 2015 to 2012. So at 2012, at that time, the switch, that was a time when suites were introduced. And as time passed by, like 2013, 2014, some other applications were added to the suite license. So in that case, what happens is, if the application was not part of the suite, right, in 2012, but was added in 2013 and 2014, that application will be added, could be added to the suite component, but will take its own license. So again, the multiple suite licenses can be used by the same user on the same system if the user is using different versions of the suite products. Even AutoCAD 2015 and 2014 from the same suite will take two licenses.
Let's go to the next one. How is it best to control licenses when engineers from all over the country occasionally travel all over the world? Probably the best thing to do is use borrowing a license, which I gave a demo for. So I'm just going to answer that right now. You can borrow a license from the server. The only thing I would definitely make sure is set up some policies so that you can set up your max borrow times. You don't want to have them borrow it for months and months. So if you know they're only going to stay for a month, maybe let them borrow it for a month. So you have to set that up in the options file if you wanted to.
Okay, so there's another question about the options file and the borrow failed, but it puts a linker into the package section anyway. So that is, so that's top question, because sometimes what happens, when end user borrows a license, the package license, right? So two entries should be made into the license server status inquiry, as well as in the debug log file. One would be a linker statement, which indicates that the license has been borrowed by a user, on a package component, as well as a package component. So two entries will be there for a specific version of the product and the package itself. Sometimes it does happen that the package component stays, but the product component fails. That's usually happens on a client side. And the problem is generated from the client side, because when the client is trying to return the license and something goes wrong, so that's what happens. And unfortunately, at that time, it prevents the borrowing feature. It prevents the borrowing that lost license, and we may need to do the remote session to look into the system and clear the cache for the borrowing. So regarding the question problem with the license linker, if the end user doesn't know how long it will be traveling, again, borrowing feature you have to use really, you have to really limit your end users, because you do not want give the users permission to borrow the license for 6 months time frame. That's the default, like David says, and then user loses the computer or has some problems returning the license, and you are just left without a license. And we do often get calls from customers and users, who are in this type of condition, and they really need some help because they have only limited licenses available, and we know whenever the license is borrowed, that particular license is not available to another user. And also the borrowed license is also is tied to a Windows user account, the product the license was borrowed for, and a system. So these three together works together. Like let's say if you borrowed a license for AutoCAD on one system and then another user comes on your system and opens up AutoCAD, AutoCAD will require to get a new license from your server. It will not use your borrowed license. That's because, again, the borrowed feature as well as the FlexLM, the way it tracks the licensing is user machine and username. To change the serial number for a pre-existing installation. Can you activate a trial with a permanent license, premium license, without reinstalling it? So if you have a trial installation of the product, that's not a network licensing, by the way. That's a kind of standalone licensing. And if you have installed your product in the trial mode and then you purchase the license, right? When trial expires, you do have an option even during the trial period to open up a license information page. You can go to about the product and let's say about AutoCAD, and you click on product license information tab. It will open up a product license information window, and from there you can update the serial number and then activate it. If you purchase a good serial number. It's also anytime you have a trial version, and if you're using the product, anytime you open a product, it asks you to activate or continue in trial mode. So if you select activate and proceed with the line, it will ask you also to put the serial number in it to activate. But so that's the only way to change the serial number for the installed product. If you install the product in the network licensing mode, whatever the serial number you have there, that's the serial number is kept into the PID file. So to change, you basically need to reinstall at that time.
Oh, by the way, for that question as well, we actually have a new tool in Autodesk Products 2015 that will speed up uninstalling a suite. It's the uninstall tool. So let me just kind of get out of this presentation. Because I only have AutoCAD installed, if you go to your Start All Programs, Autodesk Uninstall tool, it only shows AutoCAD for me. But basically for you, you can see the entire suite. You can check it, and it'll just do the install in one step. So you don't actually have to go through your control panel and select one product at a time. So hopefully that may help you out with that one.
Now there is another question. If a user is requesting the license file from Autodesk, it has multiple licenses, how the Autodesk generates the license. So Autodesk doesn't use the price list, because anytime you request a license, right, from Autodesk, and by the way, you can also generate your network licensing yourself. If you go to autodesk.com/register website, you can log on with your Autodesk account credentials, and you'll be able to generate your license. So you will need to provide your serial number to the wizard, as well as your license server name and MAC address. So that's the way to create a license file. And each request for a license file is a separate encryption. So there is a node tool, which basically combines everything automatically for you. But that's the person's job, whether the person is on the customer side or somebody at Autodesk. So the request usually comes like with the serial numbers, if it's sent to the registration team, and also they generate the licenses, separate licenses for each product, and then put together and send it to the customer. Sometimes with technical support specialists like David and I, we may need to kind of review the license to verify that it's combined properly. I personally go through the cascading sequence. Like that's what I personally refer to when combining the licenses, because I honestly do not know exactly what the price range are for each product or the suites. But based on the license cascading sequence, I'm sure at that time, I'm pretty sure that the license cascading, how it should occur on the system. Okay.
One of the questions was about finding out who has a license, and the best way to see that is actually either in the log file or in the perform status inquiry of the product. So
that's right.
I can I can give a demo of that as well really quickly. I'll launch my AutoCAD.
Now another, like regarding this, who is using what license? That question David partially answered. So the problem there is that if the user is using suite license, let's say Building Design Suite 2015, right? And if user opened up, let's say AutoCAD 2015, and AutoCAD grabbed the Building Design Suite license, on the status inquiry, you will see that Building Design Suite license is used by the username and a computer name, on which computer the product is opened. But unfortunately, you will not see which product from the suite the end user is using, whether it's AutoCAD, whether it's Revit 2015, whether it's AutoCAD MEP 2015, Navisworks 2015, or like that part you will not see, because that's hidden by the suite component, suite's feature code. But if it's the single product license, let's say for AutoCAD, in this case, you can see on the screen that can you run again the status inquiry, please? Yes. Now over here you can see that users for AutoCAD 2015 for 6430080, that's a package line, right? And you see that David has taken one license from this package. Now if you scroll down a bit, Dave, scroll down a little bit. Scroll down. Okay, you want to copy it? Okay. Okay. Now over here you can see down below that David is using actually 2015 AutoCAD. So you see two entries made when David took a license from AutoCAD pool. Like 5 licenses, one is used, one indicates now if David opens up, let's say 2014 AutoCAD, you will see 2 licenses taken out by the package line 64300. From that line you're going to see the 2 licenses taken out, but then you see one entry of David's taking license under 2015 as well as for 2014. That way, if you have a single product package license, you will know exactly which user on which computer which license is used by that particular user. But with Suite, again, the Suite hides that. With Suite you will see like a Suite license for 2014 is taken and Suite license for 2015 is taken, and 2 Suite licenses are taken. But what exactly products, we don't know, and we cannot say and see.
Yeah, that's a good question, because normally, like if you're trying to ascertain if a user is using Revit or let's say AutoCAD in the Building Design Suite, you won't know. But the good thing is that if you run the same version, like if you have Revit 15 and AutoCAD 15 and 3ds Max Design 2015 and Showcase 2015, if you run all the products in that suite, if your computer had enough RAM and was powerful enough to run all the programs, if you can run every program in that suite in the same year, it will only use 1 license. So that's the only thing I can kind of address with that. So you will not see usage per se, but the good thing is if it's the same year, it's going to use only the 1 license. Okay. As I said, the best thing to do is if you have an options file is to kind of configure the Building Design Suite to a certain group of users, because as I said, by default, if the guy just launches AutoCAD, if you have Building Design Suite on that computer and you launch AutoCAD, it will actually use the cheapest license first. So that's one of the things. So you should probably set up an options file for and reserve a group of people for that entire suite, basically. Another item too, I just want to give you some advanced stuff on the options file, is over here on the blog. If I go into Up and Ready, I might have to find it for you, but if I do options file, again, there's like a video for creating the options file. Oh, and back over here, this is the one. Should I use the package code? So there's some details about that as well. So over here, you can actually, I have a screencast where I talk about how to do time, and basically, if you actually look at the actual documentation, the PDF file, if you look at certain codes like low water, you'll see feature, so that means you have to use feature. And then if you look at exclude, you can either use package or feature. So it depends on the flag. So that's really important. So I used the 2015 code. What is it? License parser. Wow, it's taking a long time. Browse. So if I choose this file here, so in some instances on some of the flags in the options file, you can use the 64 or 6300 code. It just depends on the flag. Over here. So some options flags can use this code, but some of them you have to use like version. They have to be very specific. So you have to use like 15. Okay. Because my license file is doing it as a test or demo, mine has an expiration date. Some education facilities will have an expiration date, but if it's a perpetual license, you'll notice it says permanent. So just want to.
Yeah. Another good point, came from Jeff. Now, for example, if the user has a BDSP like Building Design Suite Premium 2014 license, package license, or 2015 license, and it runs AutoCAD 2012 and Revit 2012, even though that's the same version of the products, they take it to license. And that's right, because that's covered by the previous version licensing limitation. Because AutoCAD in 2012 had 2 installers in year 2012 when it was released. Like first was the AutoCAD 2012 single installer, like a point product installer, which installs AutoCAD with its own product key like 001, D1, I believe. And so that AutoCAD will not cascade into the Building Design Suite license. If you look into the cascading sequence for AutoCAD 2012 or Autodesk 2012 product line, you'll see there in the site that AutoCAD is not cascading into the Building Design Suite 2012 license. Now, in 2013, 2014, and 15, so that's been an issue. So in case even though the AutoCAD was a part of the Building Design Suite, you had to install AutoCAD as a suite from the suite installer to make sure that AutoCAD would take a license from the suite component. So that was a kind of hinge in year 2012. But in later years, they added the AutoCAD 2012 license, but an exception of using the one license. So the point Jeff made, that the previous version licenses that do have this kind of problem, not a problem, but a known issue, and based, it's all documented under previous version licensing solution on Autodesk website, so that the users can know about it in advance. But the good news is, like from 2016 and in future years, 2012, that was a kind of most critical year. Again, the year when suites were introduced, and maybe not everything was synced at the time. But in 2016 license, cutting date will be 2013 releases of the product, and from 2013 and above, suites should work painlessly. Expectations like that. Okay. So we are very close to end this webinar. We have 1 more minute left, and if there is any more questions, please ask. And again, you can see on your screen the URL, where you can obtain the presentation slides. So https://autodesk.box.com/up-and-ready-q2. That's the URL you can go to and get the slides.
I just want to thank everyone for attending this session, and if you attended the one 2 weeks ago where I had the blue screen, I appreciate your patience. All right? Thanks, everyone.